All right. Well, again, folks, hopefully, hopefully you guys didn't have a too hard of a time logging on. Again, I appreciate everyone working with us and joining us virtually. We're here to talk about the Western Ingersoll sewer separation, phase one. And again, just hopefully you see for those of you that can see the screen, we've got some instructions on there on how to use the Zoom application. If folks would like to speak, we ask that you please raise your hand through the Zoom computer app. You could see, hopefully you see a menu bar that looks something like this, where you could either click on the dots that say more, or click on the participants icon, and it will give you some ability to raise your hand. And then for the sake of so everyone can hear, I've muted everybody. And so if you raise your hand, I'll unmute you, and therefore you can ask your question or make comments. If you're on a phone and if you're just calling in on a phone, and so you're not using your computer, laptop, or smartphone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. So if you're on a phone, please press *9 to raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and then to unmute yourself, press *6. So again, that's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. Our Zoom is set to record the meeting, so this meeting is being recorded. Which one, so we can collect all the comments, and two, keep this for records and sharing it at a later time. So again, welcome everybody. I appreciate you taking your time out to come here and talk about the Western Ingersoll sewer separation phase one. My name's Steve Neighbor. I'm the city engineer for the city of Des Moines. I've got with me on the Zoom meeting, I've got some city staff, including Pam Cooksey from the city manager's office, David Camp from engineering, Brad Brockman from engineering. I've got Patrick Bean from the city's public works department. I've also got Tom Block from city engineering. So I've got some staff with me. I also appreciate Councilmember Voss is on the call to listen in and hear comments as well. And so again, thank you everybody for joining us. Again, this is the Western Ingersoll sewer separation phase one. We're going to give a presentation on what the project is, some background on the project, what the proposed improvements we're looking at, and a schedule. And then afterwards, we will pause and open it up for questions and discussion. So first off, just a little bit of background. When we talk about combined sewers, combined sewer systems are sewers that are designed to collect rainwater runoff as well as sewage, domestic sewage, industrial wastewater, in the same pipe system. So modern systems today that are installed are typically, there's a separate pipe, there's a separate storm sewer pipe and a separate sanitary sewer pipe. The storm sewer pipe, obviously collecting the rainwater surface runoff that goes in through the intakes into the sewer system, or sometimes travels down ditches, and the sanitary sewer system collecting domestic sewage and industrial wastewater. When we talk about combined sewer systems, it's the rainwater runoff and domestic sewage are going into the same network of pipes. Most of the time, the combined sewer system transports the wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant, the Wastewater Reclamation Authority's wastewater reclamation facility, then where it's treated, regulated, and tested and monitored, and then discharged into the river. However, during periods of heavy rainfall or possibly even snow melt, where there's an excessive amount of flow, the volume of the wastewater and the rainwater coming in can exceed the capacity of the sewer system. So for this reason, the city and combined sewer systems have what are known as combined sewer overflows. And so on the map, if you can see the map, there are a handful of locations where there are combined sewer overflow locations. And so again, when the capacity of the pipes are exceeded, the combined sewer overflow is activated, and the flow goes over into the storm sewer system, which eventually goes to the river. So obviously, an environmental concern there. The reasons are to alleviate the further surcharge and backing up, so we don't have the sewage and combined sewage and rainwater going into basements. And so that's the reason for the combined sewer overflows. Combined sewer systems are an issue faced by many cities across the country. The EPA has, I think, documented there's like 772 different cities in the U.S. That have combined sewer systems, and there's 14 alone in Iowa. Pretty common for river cities to have these systems, and so the Des Moines is working to eliminate these combined sewer overflows and separate the systems, so that you have a separate storm sewer system and a separate sanitary sewer system. In 2003, the city developed a long-term control plan, really as part of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit that's required for the operation of the Des Moines Metropolitan Wastewater Reclamation Facility. And this plan included a phased approach of capital improvements to eliminate these combined sewer overflows. The city originally had about 20 of these, and we're down to really only a few. Actually, some of the ones that are on this map today are already actually closed. And so in 2010, the city, the Des Moines Metropolitan Wastewater Reclamation Authority, and the state entered into a consent decree, which established a time schedule to complete some of the major elements of the plan, including eliminating these combined sewer overflows. So this included eliminating the combined sewer overflow that's located at 22nd and High Street. It's a facility that's operated by the Des Moines Wastewater Reclamation Authority at 22nd and High. The goal is to eliminate that facility by the end of 2023. So again, the goal of our sewer separation project is to separate the stormwater and sanitary sewer flows into separate systems, storm sewers and sanitary sewers, to reduce flow, not only reduce flow to the treatment plant, the Moines Wastewater Reclamation Facility, but to also prevent those combined sewer overflows. The Western Ingersoll Basin, we're talking about the Western Ingersoll Basin. It's basically if you want to call it a drainage basin where all the flow and the water goes. It's mapped out here in blue, but it's located in the western part of our city, bound by 31st Street on the east, and bounded by Grand Avenue on the south, and then to the on the west, kind of by 44th, 45th, and on the north, University and Forest. And so that's kind of the boundary when we're talking about the Western Ingersoll Basin, the area that flows ultimately to that 22nd High, 22nd High combined sewer overland flow that's tributary to that sewer system. That is the Western Ingersoll. The Western Ingersoll Basin is actually it's 820 acres roughly. So it's a large basin. It is divided north-south by Interstate 235. And so the southern basin, which you'll maybe see in kind of the purplish color, the southern basin located south of I-235 is a combined storm sewer system completely. There are no separate storm sewers in that purple area. So we have about roughly 30 storm intakes connected to that combined sewer system. You know, when we talk about storm intakes, if you see a lot of times they tend to be around intersections or low points where the water comes off the street or off the right of way to the surface and flows into the intake and into the sewer. And so there's about 30 of those that we have a goal of taking those off of the existing sewer system, which is combined today, and then putting them onto a new separate storm sewer system. So the existing sewer will serve only as a sanitary sewer to handle the sewage, and then the new storm sewer will take the flow from the intake. We have on the north side, there is the North Basin on Kingman has about 20 intakes. So north of I-235, there is some storm sewers already in place there, but there's still about 20 intakes that we need to, again, take off the existing sewer system and put in a separate storm sewer. So the city, working also with a consultant, had done an evaluation and prepared kind of a plan of how to do that, of how to separate the flows. And it's a combined effort of, again, constructing new storm sewers, as well as implementing a little bit of some green infrastructure, which green infrastructure, when we talk green infrastructure, is infrastructure that's used to reduce stormwater runoff, which has a number of benefits: alleviating flooding, reducing the speed and the flow that which water runs off the surface and runs into the sewer systems, as well as also promoting groundwater recharge. When you think about green infrastructure such as bioswales or pervious pavements, where we're trying to encourage the water to infiltrate into the ground, reducing that runoff. So the total cost, so here's kind of a snapshot map, hopefully you see on the screen, of the boundary, the blue boundary outlining the Western Ingersoll Basin. And what we're looking at here, we developed kind of a high level concept using modeling of where the sewer alignments should go. And the total cost of this project, the total Western Ingersoll improvements, when you look at installing all the sewers, the green infrastructure, restoring pavements and parkways as needed, would be about $20 million. So it's a very large project that we're going to have to construct in phases because of its size. And so what we're here to talk about, really focus on specifically tonight, is the first phase of the Western Ingersoll sewer separation, which is focusing on the area south of I-235, looking at streets like Pleasant Street, Woodland Avenue, Ingersoll Avenue, all between 31st Street and roughly 42nd Street. So these are the areas we're really focused on in phase one. So again, tonight we're focusing on phase one of the sewer separation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Camp, and Dave is going to talk a little more detail about when we talk, kind of paint a picture of what we're really talking about for where the improvements are going to be and what the improvements are.
Thanks, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight and letting us kind of walk you through the improvements here. I was going to start out along Ingersoll as one of the sections of the improvements. So the improvements along Ingersoll are going to run from 35th Street right next to the Price Chopper out west to 41st Street. As you can see from this slide, the storm sewer will stay mostly on the north side of the street, with some cross runs going across to pick up intakes on the south side. But and as you know, Ingersoll is getting reconstructed with the streetscape down to the east between MLK and 24th Street right now, extending out to 28th Street. And also next year, Ingersoll will be reconstructed from 42nd Street out west to Polk Boulevard. So this improvement along Ingersoll will keep traffic open along Ingersoll as we construct the storm sewer. And also, we're looking into a future extension to connect the streetscape projects to the east and the reconstruction project to the west. So we're looking at trying to incorporate as much of the proposed improvements with that future streetscape into this project as well. So kind of keep that in mind as we go through too. So if you want to go to the next slide, Steve, we'll just kind of walk down. That one was from 41st to 39th. This one is just showing from 39th over to 36. The storm sewer continues on the north side, and you'll see there at 38th Street, just right there. That's where some of the northerly storm sewers from up north will connect into the Ingersoll storm sewer system. So we'll come back as we walk through, just kind of keep note of that 38th Street going north. So, and as we get down to 35th Street, you see that tie back over to the north, right next to Price Chopper, to a pretty large box culvert, and that is our outlet. You may see some storm sewer there on 36th Street to the south. That's setting up for the final phase in the future that will run a storm sewer up to Grand and along in that phase 3 section. So you might see the color of the street is just maybe a little different on 35th Street. That's just showing that existing street is concrete, and we're going to be replacing it back with concrete along that stretch. So we talked a little bit about the 38th Street tying back in to the connection of Ingersoll. So this shows the storm sewer running from Ingersoll along 38th Street up to Woodland. We will most likely be replacing the entire street along 38th Street. So that means new curb and gutters, new pavement, and new driveway approaches through this section. You'll see in the blue there at the intersection of Woodland and 38th Street, there's a lot of intakes there. This is to accommodate that low point of the area and try and capture a lot of the rainfall that's kind of making its way down all the way to the low point of the hill there. So if you want to flip to the next one. So now we're looking at Woodland, and we're jumping back to the west. As you know, 42nd Street was reconstructed this summer, and there was some intakes on 42nd Street that we connected over to a storm sewer running over to the east, and we'll tie onto that storm sewer with this project and carry this storm sewer along all the way down to 38th Street. But we wanted to highlight this section here between 41st and 40th. This in the red, you can go down one screen, and it's this is where a section of permeable paving will be constructed. We'll look at let's see, we'll look at some of the details of the permeable paving in a few slides to kind of explain what we're looking at there. The exact limits of the permeable paving have not been exactly identified. So this section has been identified for the permeable paving because we're kind of up a little bit higher in the watershed where we can capture a lot of that water. This section of Woodland is pretty flat, and so it's a very good application for that permeable paving through there. The rest of Woodland, though, will get new curb and gutter and new new pavement along this stretch. So if you want to scroll down, just continuing on over from 40th on over to 38th Street. 39th Street there, you kind of see a storm sewer going to the north, and that's where a storm sewer we'll look at in a second, but that's going to pick up the flows coming down there from the further north. And then as we get over to 38th Street, we talked a little bit about all those intakes. That's the same location we were looking at a couple seconds ago. So go ahead and go to the next one. Now this is 39th Street. You can kind of see their Woodland stretching up to Pleasant. There again, we have a section of permeable paving identified in that location. And then you can see the storm sewer there stretching out to the, I guess, to the top of your screen in the middle of the road. But that's been working with the property owners at that location about some of the drainage issues in that area too. So, but yeah, this takes us up to Pleasant Street, sorry. And then this is kind of the final stretch of the street, the sewer in the streets. And so this stretches over to 41st Street, back to 39th Street. And you can see there in the middle, another section of permeable paving in that area. There again, this permeable paving kind of helps with that water quality aspect, and also provides some detention from the flows downstream. So you want to flip one more screen. This is kind of a typical section of what the 27-foot back of curb to back of curb sets. That provides parking for cars on one side of the street, so we can still meet fire code and still park cars along these residential streets. So go ahead and flip down. There's another pavement section that we put in there, similar. If we end up milling and overlaying a section of it, kind of shows what the contractors would see. You'll see a lot. I know this is an engineering detail, but one thing to point out is we're planning on putting a rock base underneath the pavement, and that does two things. It provides a good stable base for the pavement, but also provides the residents somewhere to drive while the street is getting put back together. As far as all these residential streets in the street construction, typically we will close these streets to through traffic, but we leave these streets open as much as possible to the residents along here. And so there will be sometimes folks won't be able to get back to their driveways, but we really try and limit that time frame. And that rock base really helps with that access. Just imagine if you're driving through a dirt and it rains, turns to mud, the rock really holds up during the rains and such. So if we don't pave it immediately after we get the rock down, folks can still access all their driveways. So maybe scroll down. This is kind of a example of what's going on with the permeable paving. There's a rock or a granular base to this, and so the water infiltrates through the pavers, comes down, so fills up the voids within that rock base, and then that provides a little bit of a multi-purpose. One, it provides a little bit of water quality aspect of filtering. Two, it recharges that groundwater in the area, and then also provides a little detention and holds that water back and releases it just a little bit slower, so it releases it a little bit longer after the rain event occurs. So scroll down one, and this is kind of the proposed section that we're looking at for these paver sections. So we're looking at putting the pavers on the outside of the roadway. The roadway typically is sloped up to the middle to create a crown. So to utilize those pavers near the middle, the street would almost have to be running almost curb deep to make those pavers in the middle of the roadway fully functioning. So we're looking at using the outsides of the roadway maybe as pavers, and then the center section is a place where folks may usually drive on, and so it does a couple things. It makes the pavers last a little bit longer. It reduces traffic on them, and then reduces the amount of maintenance areas that our public works folks may have to come and clean those periodically too. So that kind of gives you an idea what those will look like. So when is all this going to happen? The phase one that we're talking about, we're looking at bidding it here this winter, and then starting construction this summer. We're looking at, it'll probably take, because we're going to stage the construction so we don't excuse me, lock everybody out of, we don't open up each street and work on them all at the same time. We'll move through this methodically. So we're looking at completing the construction the fall of the following year. We typically don't have these roads tore up over the winter, so we won't allow them to start a project unless they can complete it that year. So, I'm sorry, start a section of the project, say a street section or so, so they have it back together before winter. The second phase shown there in green, which is north of the freeway, is kind of on the same schedule as phase one. We'll be bidding it next spring, starting construction next summer, and completing it most likely the spring of 23. Usually we have some surface restoration, sodding work to complete that following spring as well. And then the phase three, which is 35th Street up to Center and 36th Street down to Grand, a little bit smaller, but we're going to probably bid that out the spring of 2022, start on that the summer of 2022, and complete that in 2023. We need to have all these completed, like Steve said, by 2023 to meet that DNR decree. So that's the schedule for our improvements. If you, we'll sure take notes tonight if you have questions, comments, and we can answer any questions you have tonight as well. But if you have some that you don't want to speak tonight, or right after the meeting, you remember that question and you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to ask that. Feel free to contact Brad Brockman, who's a project engineer on it. His email is here, and also his phone number. It should have been in your mailing contact, and also we do have on our engineering website a project map that you can go and look at this project on our GIS, and Brad's contact information is also there. So with that, I think that concludes any of our presentation, and we can open it up for any questions that folks may have.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, like I said, Dave said on our city website, www.dsm.city, on that main page, you'll see a link if you scroll that's called Projects Map. And if you click on that map, you can type in your address or zoom in, and that'll show graphically where city projects are. And then if you click on those projects, it'll pop up a screen and tell you, one, what it is, and two, who you can contact if you have questions directly. Again, want to thank everybody. I see Councilmember Carl Voss, Councilmember Josh Mandelbaum, our Mayor Frank County with us, and I see a number of our residents joining. And so with that, again, let me scroll right back to the top with the instructions. I should have gone the other way. So if you could raise your hand to speak, I'll unmute you, and we can go from there. All right, so let me unmute Mark. Let's see if I can. Okay, Mark.
Okay, thanks. I want to pass along 5 quick questions of things I've heard at board meetings on the association board and neighbors. And I think you've answered most of them, but I want to confirm them real quick. Mm-hmm. Access and parking was the big question, which you can't really answer better than you have. And the language we want to use here is sometimes, but not often, completely closed. Almost all the time access to driveways. Is that accurate?
So
Yeah, that's, oh, go ahead, Steve.
yeah. So one, I want to start off with, we don't want to, we can't sugarcoat this. I mean, this is going to be extremely impactful work. When you put large sewers, fully reconstructing the streets, it's going to look like, like a war zone with, so as Dave mentioned, and Dave maybe you can elaborate, but the road will be, when it will phase the project, we're not going to do all the yellow at once, but it'll be phased. And when they're doing certain street segments, those segments will likely be completely closed to any through traffic, but then work to provide access during the driveways as much as possible. But there will be times where when they're working in front of the house, or say pouring back a new driveway apron or sewer going right across the house, where they'll have the contractor and we'll have to work with individual residents on providing an alternate, maybe it's park somewhere else or whatnot. So Dave,
Sure.
I don't know, do you want to elaborate?
Is it possible to say at this point which streets come when? Ingersoll and Woodland and won't be torn up at the same time? It'll be one street at a time, Ingersoll, Pleasant, Woodland?
Yeah, so if you go back to your overview map of the,
Right?
yeah, overview of the streets. So looking at those streets in yellow, the sequence really needs to be, we need to work on Ingersoll first, because that takes the storm sewers from everything north. So you're really going to work from Ingersoll toward the north. So you'll work on Ingersoll. That way you have an outlet for your storm sewer going up 39th Street, or I'm sorry, 38th Street. And then we'll probably work on Woodland. And then you'll work, so then you provide the outlet for your 39th Street sewer, and then you'll work on Pleasant. So you're going to work from downstream to upstream. So that's kind of how we envision, because if you work on Pleasant first, there's really no good way to outlet your storm sewer. So that's kind of the progression you'll see is
Well, a general idea like that is all we feel entitled to. That's very helpful. That's important. And from what I understand, curbs and gutters will all be included on every one of the gray streets on your presentation, because the street will be completely redone.
Yeah, that's the, I think a lot of the, I went to a public or a neighborhood meeting many years ago, and I think you're the one that came into my office and talked to me. And so that's one thing I heard from the neighbors and yourself too, was especially on Woodland, the curbs was a very big concern of folks. And if you look at Woodland right now, the curb exposure is only maybe an inch or two or so. And so that was, and the lessons learned we've learned from our previous sewer separation jobs is, as we go through and we try and save half the street, well, based on the construction equipment, it doesn't hold up a lot of times, and we end up doing the other side of the street anyway. And so it's just best to plan for it, get the curb exposure and make it look really nice when we walk away from it. The other one,
thank you for that, and many people will thank you for that. You're the hero of the day for saying that.
and that was loud and clear from yourself and from the neighborhood association meeting I went to. The other one is if you look at 39th Street north of Woodland, that's in pretty rough condition. As you know, it's sloped really, tilted pretty hard, and it's just, once we get in there and we start working on it, we're going to walk away from that one too. I could see that other side of the street just falling apart on us too, just based on its condition too. So this gives us an opportunity to get that in there, get the permeable paving so it functions correctly with the grades too, and I think we're going to end up with a really nice product. So,
well, thank you. Just two more quick questions before I get off. The permeable paving is kind of a surprise, but a terrific idea. Uh, I have one comment from one person here. I would really prefer to see that not be brick colored permeable material, because if it's brick in a historic district, it sticks out as a very contemporary change and a very contemporary idea. If it's possible to do it with concrete colored paving materials that are permeable, it would be less jarring for the overall character of the place, which has been real stable for 100 years.
Okay, there's also products or options of permeable asphalt, permeable concrete, and permeable pavers. So if you had your, just picking your suggestion, is would you prefer, I know you mentioned a concrete, is there any desire to keep it as an asphalt so you don't even hardly notice it?
Whatever blends in the most with the improvement material that you're using on either side of it.
Okay.
Now that's my opinion. I'll be sure and talk to the board about this and get an opinion from them as well. But I think that'll be an issue. So it's good to know there's three choices.
Is it just the color of the pavers an issue if they're bright red? Because we can get any color we want. If we put in pavers that were gray, is that still an issue with the with the neighborhood context?
It isn't for me. We'll be asking the board. But if there are other materials that show as little a change as possible to the way the street appears, that would be terrific, in my opinion only.
Okay,
So David,
So
I think that's an excellent comment. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, I think obviously what we're here is again, we don't want to have the modern pavers that are out there emulated. I mean, they are brick, but emulating brick, but then competing or conflicting with the historic nature.
Yeah.
So I think we need to go back, and we need we need to look at, when we get into the design, of what options we have to I guess make it so that maybe the permeable paver doesn't stand out, and whether that's permeable concrete, porous asphalt, or maybe there is a type of interlocking block that doesn't look like brick, right? And so we could kind of look at what these options could be and share those to go from there. Does that seem fair?
Is that with the neighborhood association you're referring to, or is there a different board that you were talking about taking it back to?
I believe it would be the neighborhood association.
Okay.
Thank you. My one last question before I get off. When you're doing Ingersoll, you mentioned in passing that this would in some way include the streetscape improvement plan from Ingersoll. That is to say, the things in the right of way between the street and the sidewalk. Is that correct?
What we would look at is we're going to be coming down the street with the sewer. So we're going to be replacing the street pavement. Now, the motif or the streetscape is going to have a little bit different feel from between MLK and 28th is a full-on streetscape. As it moves toward the west, it gets more residential as you get out to the 42nd Street. So we haven't started designing the details between 31st Street and 42nd Street. But what we do know there are some features that we will want to keep within there, such as, excuse me, the raised cycle track. Can we get that constructed as part of this so we don't have to come back and do that later? Or what can we do with this pavement reconstruction to save money down the road and also reduce impacts to the drivers and the property owners and the businesses along here later? So it may be tricky with grades and such, but it may be okay. And that's what we're looking at, is trying our best to get as much completed. I don't know that we would get back behind the curbs and put in the actual streetscape wells with trees and such, because we're just not impacting those with this sewer. So does that make sense? I mean, it's trying to incorporate as much of that proposed streetscape as we can, so we don't have to come back and remove brand new pavement,
Of course.
to redo it. So
Okay. Yes, that's a terrific answer. Thank you. There will be more talk later about that, and I'll get off now. But because the transition from commercial and contemporary character on Ingersoll west to residential and church character has always been in the master plan and the RDG study in everybody's mind, that transition from a commercial to residential and institutional is really important to the neighborhood. So we'll talk to you more about how that process goes. But thank you very much for your answers. I'll let you know if we think of anything else. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Kimberly Hansen. I have a couple questions.
Yep, absolutely, Kimberly. Yep.
And I just want to echo Mark's comment suggestion about the permeable pavement color, because that's right in front of my house. So I live on Woodland between 40th and 41st. So a couple specific questions that I have is, the sewer intake is going to be replaced on the south side of Woodland on that block. Will that disrupt will I lose my trees that's in the public right of way? I live on the north side of Woodland.
So which house are you through
I
here?
am the third one from the right there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So going up and down these streets, there are a lot of street trees through here. So that is part of the goal that we have, and you can kind of see the storm sewer alignment along 41st. Usually it runs at the back of curb or right behind the back of curb, typically. So you can kind of see we push this out in an effort to try and save as many of the trees and reduce the impacts as much as possible along here. We would have to, I don't know if Jared, you know specifically on based on the grades and such through there, if those trees are affected. I can't remember off the top of my head.
There's just because of the fact that there's areas where there's not much distance between back of curb and sidewalk, especially up on Pleasant. There's a few areas where the trees will have to come out just for the room to work. And then the other problem that we run into is because of the storm sewer being as deep as it is, even if trees aren't directly impacted, we heavily impact the root system of the tree with digging through with the pipe. So in general, if it's on the side of the road that the pipe is on, and it's in front of the sidewalk, there's a very good chance that the tree will be impacted enough that it's best to take it out. The ones across the street are likely to be able to stay because the impacts will be less because it's farther away from the trench.
So a couple more questions. So the driveway approaches, we replaced that after we moved in here. So you're replacing all the driveway approaches?
Typically, if we start to redo the entire road and if the grade changes a little bit, odds are they may be they're not going to match in elevation. So most likely we would have to replace the approach.
Okay. And one more question. So we were forced by Des Moines Waterworks to put in a new stop box about 4 years ago, even though we didn't have any problems. So we had to pay for that out of our pocket. Will this disrupt the stop boxes and disrupt the water to the houses?
It shouldn't what we do is we coordinate with the waterworks. We will typically, what we like to do is go through and do a stop box inspection prior to and after the construction. What that does is identify all the stop boxes that are in good working order before construction. And then we can, after construction, if there's an issue, we go back through and inspect them again. And if there's an issue with them, we address that. So to answer your question, we are not anticipating having any impacts to the stop box itself. And if there is, for, let's just say for some reason, we have to adjust the grade or something where the stop box is, our contractor would make that adjustment. But we're not anticipating through this section, I don't think any water main, major water main conflicts. So we would not be replacing the water mains through here. So
well, that's a good answer. So the reason why I say that is that whole block where you have the permeable pavement there, we've all been torn up and had to have new stop boxes put in, even though, so since they weren't broken, we couldn't use the insurance that we pay for through Waterworks. So that's why we all had to pay out of our pocket for them. And I believe there's only one person who had an issue in that whole block. So, I'm sure that you'll have more questions of that same level.
Did Waterworks put a new main in? Is that where that patch came from?
Yes, and that was about 3 years ago.
So they put a new water main in, and then they made you replace the stop boxes?
Yes.
That's
not right. And I know
that's different than I've ever seen Waterworks do that.
correct.
Typically, when they put in a new water main and they tap a new service, they have to take it back and all the way to the stop box and replace the stop box. That's how that's okay. So that's a little confused. I can see why people along there will be a little upset over that. So
Yes, because that's the second stop box we've put in since we've lived here 23 years. So yeah.
Dave, in this block particularly, with the water main, probably, I believe the water main is on the toward the north side of the street. We would likely not be as much in conflict with the services. So we hopefully will be able to, for the most part, leave those alone. That would probably be,
And I think I think we're deeper, so we would be under the services too.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'll stop with one more question, please.
Sure.
So about 12 years ago, down on High Street, and then when we had all the Dolls construction going on, High Street and Woodland behind Dolls was torn up massively. Is that the level of construction that we're going to see on Woodland?
You're not going to see that level. That's one of the most, I don't want to say radical, but that was an extreme example. That was a very, very large pipe sloping downhill on an uphill street. So if you stand up at 35th and or 31st and just north of Ingersoll and look up the hill, I think that depth was 20, 30 feet deep or so. It was pretty invasive. Jared, do you have the plans handy where you can, I think these are approximately 6-7 feet deep sewers, approximately.
In general, yeah, there's two locations that are kind of similar to what you're talking about, but not as extreme, or like 15-foot. And that's at the corner of 38th and Ingersoll, because there's kind of a hill there.
So that deeper sewer will be down on Ingersoll. As we get up to the residential reaches, we're going to get into smaller sewer pipe. So the one on don't quote me on the exact size, but I want to say the one on High Street was 60 or 84 inches in diameter. So you could stand in it, maybe even a little bit larger. These are going to be 18, 24, couple foot in diameter. They're going to be a lot more, lot smaller, a lot more manageable. So it won't be the same level of impact. But what Steve was talking about is like you say, when you take an existing street and just start putting a sewer down a relatively narrow, very established residential street, it gets intrusive, just by the nature. So you won't see that level of impact, but you will see construction equipment and machinery moving up and down the street. So
Dave,
yes,
on everywhere except for the one side of 39th Street, construction should be contained to the roadway enough that even the sidewalk isn't impacted. So that gives you kind of an idea that it's a little less impactful than some previous projects. The construction limits don't even stretch beyond the front edge of the sidewalk in a lot of places.
One more comment. So a lot of these very specifics will have a neighborhood meeting to have residents ask questions like I just asked, correct?
and that's kind of the question. Is the neighborhood association meeting the best forum to do that in?
And Mark, you can chime in if you want, but I think it is, because that's the way we have, presented things like this in the past to residents. Or we could always set up a separate meeting just so that, everyone knows that this is the only topic but we should push it out through the neighborhood association.
Okay.
This is Josh. I would recommend that the neighborhood association set up a separate meeting for this, just because I think this merits enough discussion or maybe enough interest. And sometimes the neighborhood association meetings don't get to topics like this right away. So I wouldn't want it to get lost. I think a separate meeting through the neighborhood association would be best.
I think you're right, Josh. I agree. That's
Okay.
all I have. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right.
I think Mark's raising his hand again.
Yeah, here, let me. Okay, let's see if I can unmute you, Mark. There we go.
Related to that, is there any way to forward to the board president the mailing list you used to notify about this project in our neighborhood? Just because it would save a lot of legwork on our part to figure out who really needs to come.
Sure, absolutely.
Is there a specific mailing list? Would that be easy?
Yeah, I think we have it in actually in a format that we use to print all the mailings. So it should be very simple to forward on.
Okay, I'll email you about it. Thanks very much.
One last question that you guys kind of mentioned was, is there any other specifics other than, you mentioned the specifics of the driveway access, anything else that you'd like that we could maybe be more prepared with appropriate exhibits or such, other than more details for that separate meeting?
I know that you're not going to be able to have the specifics, because everybody's going to say, well, what month and what day are you tearing up my street? And I know you don't have that since you haven't even let the bid out for the survey. But, I think we need to have some follow-up meetings as we go through this process. And you all know how this works. People don't think of their questions till you start tearing up the street in front of their house. So I think we need to maybe set some regular meetings and just kind of, after we get to a certain point, call them progress meetings.
And part of that would be what we have done is I think we're setting up a separate website specifically for this project as well. So that would help with status updates and and providing you a lot more detail and to your questions too. But granted, not knowing what the questions are too, so I understand.
Well, and then folks who aren't able to attend, obviously when we get closer to, like I said, our next steps are to do detailed design and then start preparing bid documents. And then we got to go through the bidding process. And once we get a contractor on board, but once, prior to construction start, we also send out mailings that have the city inspector contact as well. So if folks want to specifically just talk directly, one, they can call Brad Brockman, the project manager, but also the project inspector that's on site, working as the city's inspector for the project as well. So if they want to talk specific issues, about their property.
And like Steve said, is at that time, the inspector on site is going to know exactly the next step from the contractor moving through. So he'll have the most up-to-date timeframes, and that's more specifically, for example, saying when specifically is my driveway going to be unaccessible, and that's we'll have trouble answering that, like you said, in a meeting next month versus during construction kind of thing. So
I think that sounds great.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay, I see
you got one
Galaxy S9. Let me unmute you. Okay.
Hi there. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for holding this, whoever coordinated this, and the fact that it's at the time that you held this meeting, because a lot of this public meetings and such, it seems to, at least when I do hear about these things, they're held like during the day on at a time that's difficult for a lot of us who have full-time day jobs. It's difficult to attend these sort of things when they're held most public meetings, it seems like, are at the most inconvenient times possible for a lot of us out here, I guess. So I just wanted to say that, I guess.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I actually, not that it matters, but I'll say that it would be nice if more of this, that it made it more of these type of public meetings, whether it doesn't matter what it's about. It's unfortunate that more of them couldn't be held at times like this when a lot of us could attend more often, I guess.
Okay.
There is a city calendar on the city's website also, there's a lot of public meetings going on that maybe you're not, maybe it's regarding a project where you on your route to work, so you may not be notified specifically where you live, but you may be interested in a certain part of town, or maybe it's near your work or something. So that's one thought is there is a city calendar for all of our public meetings that we've been posting those. And to your point, we have been having a lot more of these meetings in the evenings as well too. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that information too. Thank you.
Yeah, he brings up right again. I encourage everyone to check out our website at dsm.city. We did overhaul our website about a year or two ago, and so there's a couple things on there. One, Dave mentioned that there's the calendar when we talk about events. You'll see that there's upcoming meetings that are coming up. So if you went to the homepage right now, you would see right on the main page, you would see this meeting as well as some others. And then you could also scroll down and click on, there's a projects map, because to be, if you click on projects map, you can type in your address or zoom in and see what it is from a city project that's going on. So thank you for that. Thank you. So,
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
Steve,
Yep.
Frank County here.
Yep.
I appreciate that individual's comment about the times, and I think we ought to point out that not only do we try to accommodate neighborhood meetings, even when we have budget meetings, as you know, we've tried to do them all around town and after work, because we have heard from lots of folks that those meetings, there are some groups that hold them at 9 o'clock in the morning, that those are not convenient for citizenry to have input or even see it. So I appreciate that comment, and we'll continue to try to have more meetings on a variety of subjects at times when residents can be home after work and get a chance to give us input. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor County. And all right. All right. Do you have any other questions or comments? And again, again, this is, we like to hold these meetings, pretty early in the phase. We have not done detailed design yet. And that's for the reasons that you heard tonight. We had some comments that are that we can gain that we'll use before we design. I mean, so in other words, the comments about the pervious pavements, instead of going in detail designing all that and then getting the comments, we found it better to have an initial public meeting early on in the project phase to gather input from folks. I know sometimes it's can be frustrating to some people because we don't have a lot of details, because we don't have the detailed construction schedule, but we found it to be successful to have a meeting early on in the phase to gather input prior to doing the detailed design. So again, please keep in mind, if you think of things later, we've got Brad Brockman as our project manager. His phone number 283-4070, also listed on the mailings. If you have any follow-up questions, otherwise, as we get closer to construction and get through our design, you'll be hearing further. All right, any last comments? Hold on just a couple seconds here. Well, hearing none, again, I want to thank everyone so much for your time to meet with us. I want to thank Mayor County, who we just heard, Councilmember Josh Mandelbaum, Councilmember Carl Voss. Again, thank everyone for joining us. Hearing no comments, I want to thank everyone. Have a great and safe evening. So I hope everyone stays safe and have a great evening. So
Thank you, everyone.
thank you. All right. Thank you.